the sound of cutlery clinking against porcelain used to mean comfort. That night it felt like judgment. Steam rose from the pot roast as my father's voice cut through the air. Low, deliberate, final. I'm done pretending you ever belonged here. For a moment, no one breathed. My mother stared at her plate. My brother smirked like he'd been waiting for this performance. I reached for my bag quietly, my pulse steady in my wrist. The scarf I always wore, soft ivory, frayed at the ends, brushed against my fingers. It had once been my mother's. She'd given it to me for luck the same week she stopped saying she loved me. My name is Noelle Varon. I'm 28 years old. What does it take for a family to decide you're an outsider, silence, or truth? I looked around the table one last time. The candles flickered, casting gold light across faces that had forgotten mine. My father's hand trembled as he reached for his glass, but his eyes stayed sharp, rehearsed in their cruelty. Don't come back, he said. You've made your choice. The chair beside me seemed to sigh when I stood. For years, it had held my weight through birthdays, announcements, and quiet wars. Tonight, it looked relieved, like it had been waiting for me to leave. I didn't argue. No dramatic farewell, no apology. Just the scrape of wood against tile, my footsteps echoing down the hallway I'd walked since childhood. Outside, rain fell in slow, deliberate drops, as if the sky, too, was practicing restraint. When the door clicked shut behind me, it was quieter than I expected. In that stillness, something unlatched inside me, not pain, not rage, but a kind of clarity. 6 months later, that same silence would echo back through this house, carrying the truth they'd buried, and I had finally unearthed. The rain didn't chase me that night. It followed softly, like an old friend who finally understood. By the time I reached the corner, the lights of our house blurred into gold streaks behind me. My bag felt heavier than usual, not because of what I carried, but because of what they didn't know I had taken. Inside the scarf's fold was a small, creased photograph. My father standing with another man, their hands clasped over a document stamped Varon Holdings. I had found it months ago in his study, tucked behind an old ledger. My name wasn't on any of the papers, but the dates, the signatures, the missing transfers, they told a story my parents never meant me to see. I remember the day it clicked, the scholarships that vanished, the house loan that mysteriously doubled, my future rewritten by people who claimed they did everything for me. So I did what any daughter branded ungrateful would do. I learned. Quietly. I started studying corporate law at night, under a different name. 6 months later, I knew more about my family's assets than they did. That night, when I left, I wasn't escaping. I was preparing. The streetlights hummed as I walked, water dripping from my scarf. My phone buzzed, a message from Elias, my mentor. Everything's ready. You sure you want this, Noelle? I typed back. They already chose for me. A car passed, splashing light over the pavement. For the first time, I didn't flinch. The rain slid down my face, cold and pure. Behind me, my father was probably pouring another drink, believing he'd finally silenced me. But the truth has a sound of its own, patient, steady, impossible to unhear. And soon it would start knocking. 6 months slipped by like a well-planned heist, slow, silent, and precise. By day, I was Nova Hale, a new legal associate hired by the auditing firm that handled Varon Holdings' compliance reviews. By night, I was still Noelle, tracing every lie they'd built into ledgers and loans. No one recognized me. I'd cut my hair, darkened its shade, changed my glasses, even learned to smile differently. My father had always said I lacked his business sense. He had no idea his daughter was sitting across the boardroom table now, watching him sign what would one day undo him. The building smelled of metal and ink, clean, efficient, impersonal. Every morning, I'd pass the same secretary who used to bring coffee to our house. She'd glance at me and hesitate, sensing something familiar but never placing it. That was the power of silence. It lets truth hide in plain sight. The scarf, my symbolic talisman, stayed folded in my drawer. I'd look at it before meetings, the frayed ends reminding me of the night I walked out. The night I became someone else. One afternoon, while reviewing a vendor contract, I found what I'd been searching for, an offshore account tied to an alias that matched my mother's maiden name. Millions funneled discreetly, marked as consultancy bonuses. My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. I printed the proof and slid it into a plain folder labeled simply Archive B. "Good work, Nova," said the senior partner, glancing at me. "You're sharp." "Just doing my job," I replied, hiding a faint smile, because my job was almost done. When I left the office that night, the city lights reflected on the wet glass like fragments of the truth, ready to shatter, waiting for the right touch. And I was that touch. The call came on a Thursday morning, slicing through the calm like a blade. "Nova," my supervisor said, "the board requested a surprise audit. Varon Holdings is under review for asset misrepresentation. You'll be leading document verification." For a second, my fingers froze on the keyboard. It was too soon. The plan wasn't complete. But fate rarely waits for perfect timing. It only listens for conviction. That afternoon, I entered the conference room that once hosted my family's charity dinners. The same chandelier that hung above our Sunday table now gleamed over corporate masks. My father stood near the projector, tall, controlled, pretending this wasn't the beginning of his reckoning. When he spoke, his voice was steady, too steady. "We've done nothing wrong. We'll cooperate fully." My mother sat beside him, pearls glinting against her collarbone, face unreadable. Her eyes drifted over the room and landed on me. Just for a second, something flickered, a confusion, a familiarity she couldn't name. My heart skipped. I lowered my gaze and adjusted my glasses. "Nova Hale," the senior partner introduced. "She'll oversee the legal compliance phase." Her lips parted slightly. "Noelle," she whispered, too soft for anyone but me to hear. I looked straight at her. "Ma'am." Her expression faltered. "Nothing. Just, you look like someone I once knew." The meeting continued, but the air was electric. Each document I handed over felt like a confession wrapped in paper. My father signed, initialed, approved, unknowingly authorizing the slow unraveling of his own empire. That night, I opened my drawer and touched the scarf again. It smelled faintly of rain and old perfume. For the first time, I didn't feel small touching it, because tomorrow the past would speak, and it would speak in my voice. By morning, my report was complete. 57 pages of precision, stripped of emotion but pulsing with truth. Every false invoice, every offshore transfer, every shell contract was there, stitched together like a quiet confession. The evidence didn't scream, it whispered, and that whisper was louder than thunder. At 9 a.m., I placed the file on the boardroom table. My father glanced at the cover page, oblivious to the trap beneath the paper. "Efficient work, Ms. Hale," he said smoothly. "You remind me of someone I used to know. Someone honest?" I asked before I could stop myself. His brow furrowed. "Careful with your tone." Across the table, my mother's fingers twitched on her pearls. She hadn't looked away from me once since the meeting began. I could feel her recognition scraping at the edges of denial. When the partners began discussing the report's next steps, she leaned closer and whispered, "If you are who I think you are, please don't do this." Her voice cracked on please. For a moment, I almost broke. Almost. But then I remembered the night she'd sat silently while he erased me with one sentence. I remembered the laughter that followed as I left. "I'm just doing my job, Mrs. Varon," I said softly. She flinched at the name, like it cut differently now. After the meeting, I walked past the glass corridor overlooking the city. My reflection stared back. Not Noelle, not Nova, just the in-between. The scarf was folded in my hand, its frayed threads catching the light like small, pale flames. By sunset, the report would reach the regulatory board. By sunrise, their empire would start to crumble, one signature at a time. Still, a part of me wondered, when truth burns, does it cleanse or destroy? They came at dawn. Black cars lined the front gates of Varon Holdings, their reflections slicing through the mirrored lobby like silent verdicts. The investigators moved with calm precision, polite, efficient, unstoppable. From my office window, I watched the familiar world I once begged to belong to finally tremble. Employees whispered in hallways. The boardroom blinds snapped shut. My father's name echoed through the building, no longer with admiration, but with fear. By noon, his office door slammed open. He stood there, red-faced, disbelief tightening his jaw. "Who leaked it?" he demanded. "Who dares turn on me?" Silence. Only the sound of the rain outside, the same rhythm that had followed me the night I left. "It's internal," someone murmured. Someone close. I kept my eyes on the papers in front of me, the ink blurring slightly from my trembling fingers. My mother appeared moments later, pale but composed. She scanned the room, then saw me. This time, recognition didn't hesitate. It landed, heavy and irreversible. When the chaos thinned, she found me alone near the elevators. "Noelle," she said, her voice barely a breath. I turned, the name cutting through the false identity like glass. "You shouldn't be here," she continued. "He'll destroy you if he finds out." "He already did," I said quietly. "I'm just returning what's his, the truth." Her eyes glistened, a lifetime of silence collapsing inside them. "You think this will heal you?" I looked past her, toward the glass doors where the investigators carried boxes labeled financial evidence. "No, but it might stop the bleeding." The elevator chimed. She reached out, but I stepped back, the scarf falling slightly from my hand, ivory against black tile. When the doors closed, her reflection lingered, a ghost of what love could have been if it had ever chosen me. The next morning, every headline bore his name. Varon Holdings under federal investigation, possible fraud, tax evasion, asset misappropriation. I arrived at the office early, coffee in hand, pretending to read the news like everyone else. But when my father stormed in, the air itself recoiled. His gaze was wild, a man who'd lost the one thing he couldn't buy back, control. "Who did this?" he shouted. "Who's behind this smear?" Every voice stilled. Even the ticking clock seemed to hesitate. Then his eyes found me, Nova Hale, standing beside the senior partner, calm, composed. His stare lingered too long, confusion tightening into fury. "You," he hissed. "I know you." I met his gaze. "Do you?" The silence that followed was an abyss. My mother entered moments later, face pale, holding a copy of the report, my report. She placed it on the table. "She didn't do this to you," she said quietly. "You did it to yourself." His expression cracked. "You knew." Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, restrained. I just didn't have the courage to stop it." The room pulsed with shock. The partners excused themselves. Cameras flashed outside the glass walls. Reporters already waiting. I took a step forward, unwrapped my scarf, and placed it gently on the table between us. "You once told me I didn't belong here," I said, voice steady. "Now you'll have to prove you do." He lunged halfway toward me before security intervened. His shout echoed against the marble, raw, desperate, defeated. As they escorted him out, I glanced at my mother. She nodded once, not in forgiveness, but acknowledgement. When I left the building, rain had started again, soft and cleansing. The city hummed below, unaware it had just witnessed a dynasty fall to silence. And yet, my revenge wasn't finished, not until truth found its rightful home. The storm didn't end with his arrest. It lingered, heavy and slow, like grief learning to breathe again. Reporters camped outside the gates. Former employees sold stories to tabloids. Varon Holdings, once my father's fortress, became a cautionary tale flashing across every business channel. I stayed invisible, letting the chaos consume itself. The firm offered me a promotion. I declined. My work was done. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at my apartment. Cream paper, no return address, sealed with wax. I recognized the handwriting instantly. My mother, Noelle. They've taken everything. The house, the accounts, his reputation. He sits in silence now, not speaking. I hope you're proud. I hope you're free. Your mother. I read it 3 times before folding it neatly and placing it inside the same envelope that once held their secrets. Freedom, I thought, doesn't feel like victory. It feels like truth breathing for the first time. The scarf hung by my window, the morning light threading through its frayed edges like veins of gold. I hadn't worn it since the day I placed it on the boardroom table, but I couldn't throw it away. It wasn't a relic of pain anymore. It was proof that even something torn could still hold light. I decided to return home once more, not to them, but to the house, the one where I'd first learned that silence could wound deeper than words. The front yard was overgrown, the porch sagging slightly. Inside, dust coated everything like forgotten snow. The dining room remained untouched. Same table, same chairs, even the faint outline of candle wax on the wood. I ran my fingers across the chair where I once sat. It didn't sigh this time. It just waited, patient. From my bag, I took the scarf and draped it across the backrest, a quiet reclamation. My father's voice no longer echoed here. The walls didn't accuse me anymore. The house wasn't a graveyard of shame. It was mine now. As I turned to leave, I noticed a faint glow on the floor where sunlight met the table's reflection. For the first time, it looked warm. Outside, I breathed in the scent of wet earth and lavender. Somewhere, a church bell rang, not mournful, just steady. I smiled, not out of triumph, but peace. The truth hadn't destroyed me. It had rebuilt me, slowly like dawn undoing the night. Later that evening, I sent one final message to my mother. You were right. I didn't belong there. I belong here in the truth. No reply ever came, and I didn't need one. Some silences don't hurt anymore. They just mark where pain used to live. As I closed the gate behind me, the rain started again, soft, cleansing, familiar. The scarf swayed gently in the window, a quiet monument to everything that was lost and everything finally found.